Hi, welcome to another exciting episode of the Andre The Beast Crayton Show. Another exciting show, another exciting guest. Today we're going to go into one woman's journey with dealing with rheumatoid arthritis. I think I got it right. And what this is like. And let me tell you why are we going here. We all going to suffer some type of illness through life. We need to know how to either correct it, maintain it, and enjoy life from that moment on. When I talked to this young lady, it was almost like reliving the same scenario of dealing with something that has to do with joints and healing and how to do it, because a lot of this stuff I had no idea. Even though my degree is in exercise science, I didn't understand a lot of the medical terminology that comes with this and what the doctors may or may not have to share with me, or should I have had surgery? What were more options for me? Today, without further ado, let's welcome to the show. I'm gonna make sure I get the last name right. Miss Amber Hayslip. Did I get it right?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Boom.
Hello. Let's go.
Boom. Starting out good today. So, welcome to the show. So, without further ado, tell us a little bit about you, Amber, before we get started.
Yeah, so I am an athlete. I played basketball, soccer, anything I could get my hands on, any type of movement, into college. And now I've kind of been putting off this calling in my life to help people with their movement and changing their lives. And God keeps calling me back to that assignment. So
Right.
I'm finally just aligning and going for it and helping others with their journey through wellness, whatever that may look like for them.
I like how you said the universe, God, whatever, but a higher something has pulled you to go back to what the universe feels is important, but more importantly, you feel is important. When you say that you're calling, that this is something some force is telling you need to do this, why did you walk away, and why do you think you have to do this?
I always gravitated toward what I was taught when I was younger, which is like, you have to get a good job. You have to make sure you have security. You have to make sure that you're providing. It has to be stable. So I always thought that my interests couldn't provide stability. So I would keep putting them off. And then with the introduction of all the social media and everything like that, I can see that there are people that are doing both. They're impacting people, they're creating stability for their families and for themselves. And so I always would go toward the safe route, but then the safe route I would quickly lose interest in because I wasn't aligned with what I was doing. And so I would dabble and try to go into, training or helping people, but then I would float back towards that safety net of knowing that I could be in a position that provided security, but I was still afraid to take like the full leap of faith to trust that my purpose would also create that safety for me.
I like the way you said that. So let's go back a little bit. You lived in Ohio. You're now in North Carolina. Did you grow up in a pretty tight-knit environment? Mom, dad, brothers, sisters, all that? Was it pretty well structured in your? I take it that it was, because you said this is what people was telling you to do. So did you come from a strong family structure?
So I grew up kind of, my parents were less than paycheck to paycheck most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
And I think we were on welfare and had assistance and things like that. My siblings are actually 15 years older than me.
Mm,
So I was a pleasant surprise.
right.
Um, and my mother passed away when I was 14. My dad was an alcoholic. So I come from like a kind of a chaotic environment. So I think my siblings are really the ones that established, they wanted me to be taken care of. So they established that, you know, you get a good job, make sure that you're taking care of yourself and things like that. They really kind of stepped in as mentors for me in that way.
You mentioned, I'm sorry about the passing of your mom at 14 years old. I can relate to that. Your father, you said, if I'm correct, was an alcoholic. At
Yes.
14 years old, how did the impact of your mom passing change? Because was your father like what some people call a functional alcoholic? Or like how did that whole paradox change for you when your mom passed?
So my mother actually got up the courage to leave my father. Um, so he was able to get sober, come back to the family unit, and then uh, I think it was less than a year after that, my mother was diagnosed. And then she passed away 9 months after she was diagnosed. So after she passed away, it was kind of a scary time because she was kind of always my rock in that family unit situation.
Mm.
And he fell back into his old patterns with alcohol. So um, my sister actually stepped in, and I lived with my sister a few months after he sort of relapsed back into that lifestyle.
Let's go back. So you was able to basically reformat your life, going to college. Were you still? Let me do this. You mentioned you did a lot of things to fit the structure of society, but you wasn't happy. What were some of the things you were doing that you felt you had to do what society felt you had to do?
Um, I would do things like a lot of it came with my career choices.
Right.
I always lived outside the grain a little bit.
What do you mean
Like
by that? What do you mean by that? You're smiling. So what does that mean?
um try to fit in, but then most of the time I would revert back to being myself, where I sold all my stuff and got into a van and traveled around the country and in the van. So I would
Really?
yeah, I would still do stuff like that where like my siblings wanted that stability for me, but uh, I would still kind of do my own thing. So I always floated in and out of that, but as I've gotten older, I've definitely tried to. Um, I had a decent career lined up after I did the traveling, but then I was diagnosed with rheumatoid, so that it was a really physical job. So that kind of threw my whole life for a loop because I had that. I felt like I had stepped into that secure role, and then it was kind of like all thrown off by that diagnosis.
What were you doing that two-part question. What were you doing that landed you in the hospital where you got detected with the rheumatoid situation? Were you feeling pains and symptoms prior to this, and what do you think triggered you? Because you had to go to the hospital to get diagnosed with this.
Yeah, so I was doing CrossFit, and
Don't go there. Don't go there.
my
I tell people all the time that CrossFit is cool, but it will. Okay, go ahead. I ain't gonna go down that rabbit hole, but go ahead. So you was doing CrossFit, and then what?
so I had to fulfill my competitive nature somehow because I was outside of sports at that point. So
Right.
I liked the community and the competitive nature of CrossFit, but I talked to one of the people in the class, and I was like, "Hey, are your guys' like joints really hurting? Like, I feel like I can't recover as well as like I was
Hmm.
previously." And they're like, well, "What do you mean? Like, is it just like one specific joint?" And I'm like, "No, it's like all of them,
Right,
like
right,
all of my joints."
right.
And she's like, "You should go to the doctor. Like, that is not like a normal thing." So I went to the doctor and they do blood work, and there's this marker in your blood that's called the rheumatoid factor.
Hmm.
And you're supposed to be at like 14 or below is like a normal range. And I was like 94.
What?
Yeah. And
You were,
I've talked to people who are even further off of the chart. But yeah, I was at 94.
I'm surprised you didn't
So
wake up with excruciating pain with anything you did, movement wise.
yeah. Yeah. And it was just like very, it's hard to explain because it's like this very dull, like constant state of being, really. Like it's just like always there in the background. So I think, with the mindset I have of just like we push forward, we keep going, through all of the stuff that I've been through, I would just always override that and just say, no factor, like let's keep going.
Hmm.
So um so yeah, that's how I was diagnosed, was through blood work.
What did
And
they
then
What did they tell you had to do now? Because I get it. When you're an athlete, you don't want to hear setbacks,
right.
and we try to say to ourselves, "Let's keep going. I deal with it." But
Right.
when you're dealing with something like that, the you're going to wind up doing more damage. So what did they tell you when you left? Did they give you like something you had to do? Did they give you some longevity? What was the good, the bad, and the ugly once you got diagnosed? That now you got to sit back and analyze you being a athlete, strong individual. Now you got to deal with a medical issue.
Yeah. And the long, the bad, the ugly, that's exact, those were great words to describe the whole process. So they immediately shipped me off to a rheumatologist. And I'm from like a smaller town, so the resources that are there aren't necessarily the best resources that you can get. So the rheumatologist just immediately wanted to put me on medication, and I was 24 at the time. So I was like, hold up, like, what does this even mean? Like, I was just like a kid. I didn't know exactly like what was going on. And he was like, oh, you haven't Googled it yet? And so that's the kind of care that I was getting.
Mm-hmm.
So he immediately put me on steroids, and to get the inflammation under control. And I was saying, like, what about my diet? Are there things lifestyle wise that I can change to sort of help myself out? And he's like, oh no, just keep doing what you're doing. You look fit enough. And meanwhile, I'm over here, eating cinnamon rolls and a bunch of ice cream, and my metabolism is like good, so I'm just eating whatever I wanted to.
Right,
Um, I got a second opinion from, you're familiar with Columbus, so a doctor at OSU,
right.
and I went, higher up to try to get like a better understanding, and my rheumatoid factors were still high there. They were like 64 when they took my blood. And he was like, I don't know. It could be, it could not be. You could just have tendonitis or bursitis. I'm not sure. And so he proceeded to put me on a lot of other medications. One of the medications uh, lowers your immune system. It was actually an old cancer drug called methotrexate. Contracted meningitis, so I ended up in the hospital.
You contracted meningitis from the medication, so you had an allergic reaction to the medication.
The medication lowers your immune system.
So that
So
just set up the proper environment to basically to catch something that, wow. So
yeah, like I'm never normal. I'm not like a sick person. I don't normally get sick every flu season or anything. So I was in and out of people's houses. That was the occupation that I had at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So I was taking the drug, and it was lowering my immune system. Ended up contracting meningitis. I'm thinking from, that being in that type of environment.
Right.
So, got the second opinion, was still on a lot of medications. They were making me feel worse than if I was just dealing with the pain like before.
Mm-hmm.
So, eventually I was like, I'm done with this. I went to a dietitian, and the dietitian absolutely changed my life because she explained to me how I could change different things about my lifestyle,
Mm-hmm.
and how different foods also contribute to inflammation. And it was like a huge wake up call to how some medications, their side effects are worse than,
Yeah.
what they end up helping you with. So that's kind of how all of that ended up transpiring.
What was the time process that you was dealing with from the first time you walked in until the time that you actually met with the nutritionist? Like, was it a year, 2 years? What was the time span?
It was around 2 years.
So 2 years you're dealing with pain, meningitis, and God knows what else, a weakened immune system. You go to the nutritionist. What did you have to change? Because you already don't let the cat out the bag. So definitely she took you off the honey buns and all the stuff that you liked. So what was some of the things that she took out, and what did she add to your diet to help you at least deal with it without having to resort to the medications?
Yeah, so immediately she did a food sensitivity test. So, which is another blood draw, and it shows kind of the things that could be reactive to, with your system in terms of inflammation. So, with the food sensitivity test, after you get the results of that, you have a list of green foods, which are all foods that are, the safest for you to go with. So you eliminate all of your yellow and red foods,
Mm-hmm.
just to go with the green foods. So I was eating like pork chops, green beans, and tilapia. Those were like mostly, my food options. And then after you get a baseline kind of what, you get your body back to baseline, then you can reintroduce some of the yellow foods and see how your body reacts to it. But I think that food sensitivity tests aside, that was just the precursor that showed me what nutrition can do. But really, what I believe is it's mostly about whole foods, like getting the best quality that you can with what you, like your budget of just whole foods, really.
How difficult was it for you to change that? Because two-part question. How difficult was it for you to change that? And how long did you start seeing a difference in your overall performance, your overall health? And more importantly, did it really help you to deal with the rheumatoid arthritis?
Yeah, so it wasn't as difficult as I thought it would be, because I have kind of like that mindset of, okay, if we're doing this, we're doing this. And my wife is like she was a huge advocate for me through the whole process. So having a partner that like absolutely supports you, she would cook some of my meals for me, make sure, I was staying on track, encourage me if I was, in a low place with it. But at that point, I was just desperate to do whatever it was going to take to make myself feel better. So like, I'm sure with being an athlete, whenever you feel terrible, you will do, health is number one. You'll do whatever you need to do in order to make yourself feel better, especially coming from a place where I had never really felt like that before. So I was like, I do not want to feel like this. So eating a pork chop instead of ice cream, was no factor to me because I was like, I don't want to feel like this anymore.
Let's
So
let's let the viewers know, because when you have a good fast metabolism, you can enjoy those things like ice cream and stuff. So we need to
yeah,
let
and I was 24, so
yeah.
now I would never eat how I ate then anyway because I was in my 20s and things work a lot quicker.
When this is the funny part that kind of trips me out here. When did you go back? When you went back and shared with the doctor that you had an allergic reaction to the medication, what was there? What was that allowed you to contract not only a weakened immune system but meningitis? What did they say to you? Oh, we're sorry.
I wish, but it's kind of like par for the course when it comes to those medications. Like, what some people don't realize, especially when they're diagnosed, is autoimmune diseases. So like lupus, rheumatoid arthritis, Hashimoto's, like those are big ones, especially that females deal with. Autoimmune is all about your immune system. So your immune system is attacking certain parts of your body depending on which thing that you're diagnosed with. And so the only way that they have figured out to help that is to create immunosuppressants. Mm-hmm. So instead of, being able to solve the problem, okay, you just take this drug and it suppresses your immune system. So your immune system stops overreacting to that part of your body, in my case, my joints. So it doesn't actually fix any of the problem. It just helps lower your immune system so your immune system stops attacking that part of your body as much. And so when your immune system's lower, then that leaves room for all sorts of other things to come into your world. You have a suppressed immune system. So then that makes it way easier for like meningitis to come along or just to be sick in general.
How have you been now? Because I'm glad you brought that up and educated us on that, because that's what we also do here. Not only do we showcase that beast mindset, but we also like to educate individuals. And this is an episode that I really like, because you're showing multiple sides of a situation that's happened to you with the arthritis, but something that you focused on. Nutrition changed the pathway. The illness is still there. It's just suppressing, but you still have to deal with this. So did it affect your training? What did you do differently now to keep you with what you like to do, which is be competitive? How did you change your workout regimen?
My workout regimen went more toward bodybuilding, so I could keep my tabs on how my body was feeling day to day, versus just kind of, going hard and sending it and like dealing with however I felt. It gives me the ability to kind of track my progress and still make progress in areas that I would like to make progress in. Mm-hmm. But one of the biggest things with autoimmune is our world is running rampant with it right now. Right. And nobody is fully talking about it. And a huge factor that I believe in, there's a book that's called The Body Keeps the Score. And so if you've dealt with like a lot of trauma in your life, your nervous system is reacting to that trauma, and it has certain modes that it goes into to build different defenses for you. And all of that trauma, emotional, physical, anything like that, is being held in different places in the body, in your nervous system, because your nervous system has been reacting to that. So I think that the things that I dealt with when I was younger made it a better environment for the rheumatoid arthritis or the things to take place than on the back end of that. So I think it's also important for people who have been diagnosed or who maybe aren't feeling their best to take a look at, how they're treating their nervous system, if they're, being still with themselves, or you don't necessarily have to meditate all the time, but just being quiet with yourself and creating safety for yourself inside your own world, inside your own body, not drinking 7 gallons of coffee and, road raging and all of that. Your body and your nervous system is keeping record of all of that.
I agree with that, because I tell people all the time, learn how to control your emotions, because first of all, if you can't deal with a lot of that trauma, it's stored somewhere, and all it takes is something to amplify it. And now, if you haven't dealt with these things, just like you said, this may or may not be the end result. When you was able to do the switch from into bodybuilding and now nutrition, what about your mental side? Because you just talked about that. How did you address your mental side? Because now you had so much information being put on you. You lost your mom, your dad resulted back to what he was doing. Not saying you had a bad childhood, but let's get real. Now you have to, just as much as you have to worry about the rheumatoid arthritis, you got to worry about your mental health. How did you incorporate that? What were some of the methods that you did to put all this together and make you a trainer, you're a wellness coach? How did you come up with the recipe for success for yourself to keep that beast mindset going?
Yeah, that's a great question, because I think that's one thing that people also don't talk about a lot is, okay, I've been diagnosed, but what does that mean for my mental health?
Right.
It's like my body's sick, but then there's also the factor of how that affects your mental health. And for me, like I said, I think that it was a gift to me to be diagnosed, because it made me completely change and start to build my life how I wanted it to be, versus just sort of living unconsciously and doing whatever and things like that. Like, I think that I was a pretty happy-go-lucky person before I was diagnosed, and then being diagnosed kind of just threw me into a headspace that I had never experienced before.
Mm-hmm.
With challenges that I had never experienced. I was super emotional, and it made all these emotions come up, and I wasn't usually really a crier, and I was just crying all the time, and it was right before I was about to get married, and it was just a very emotional time. Mm-hmm. And I want to let people know that that's normal to feel that way. Mm-hmm. But we have to come to the point where we say, okay, how am I going to advocate for myself, and how am I going to move on from here? We can't stay in this mindset where I'm a victim, and, it's okay to have hard days,
right?
But understand that you can advocate for yourself, and you don't have to give up just because a doctor is telling you certain things. You can advocate for yourself, and there's so much education out there now, mm-hmm. that and resources that you can find and implement into your life and see how they work or don't work. So my mindset, I was able to kind of fall apart and rebuild it the way that I wanted it to be. Not saying that it's perfect all the time, but I was able to actually build myself into the person that, I wanted to be.
You talk about your marriage. Congratulations.
Thank you.
How important was the response from your mate? Because now you're married, they have to deal with this too. They have to have almost that same mindset. How important was their understanding and to help them make sure that you stay on track, where you guys can both understand each other's wants and needs and still stay on track mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, the whole 9 yards?
Yeah, it was everything. Like everything in life. If you're trying to diet, or you're trying to change habits, or you're trying to do, really anything to grow, and you're married or you have a significant other or anything like that, it makes everything go so much smoother and better if they're on the same page with you, to be able to support you. So really, it was everything to me. And at the time, she was like 21. So, like I said, we were both just kind of kids, like trying to figure out like some really serious stuff. So it's okay for people not to be perfect all the time. I think in this technology world that we live in, I think we lose sight that people are human, and we kind of grow and evolve. And, this problem was presented to both of us, and she did an amazing job, being there for me, even when I was a completely different person. Like I said, I hadn't been super emotional. I was like a rock, pretty strong. And then I was dealing with all this. So she was like, "You're crying. Like, what, like, what is this? What's happening?"
Yeah.
So, she rides through everything, and we've been married for 8 years, and
Wow.
it's been like the greatest blessing to me to have someone that's just like loyal, and I can be imperfect and she can be imperfect, and we can learn and go through challenges together. And it's everything if you have somebody that can support you through the different challenges of life.
Now you seem to be doing a heck of a lot better, and I really appreciate you taking time to share such a beautiful story of even being diagnosed with something like that you took accountability. It didn't change your trajectory of keeping that beast mindset. What I do like is that you said something that the viewers need to really listen to. You need to take control of your health. Even like I said, I just had, double knee replacements, and the biggest part of that challenge wasn't the actual knee replacement itself. It was the recovery process. And I noticed I was retaining a lot of water, but the water was also, you in the fitness field, it was prohibiting me from healing because of movement. And, I was like, hey, why don't we do a Lasix? Why don't we drain some water off of this sucker so I can move? That's taking control of my health, because I tell people I'm not trying to overstep the boundaries of a doctor, but you can also, like you said, you can do your own research, and a lot of stuff is just right there in front of us. If I'm holding water, get rid of some of the water so I can at least move and heal. If I'm able to move and get the mobility, I'm able to go. So I like the fact that you did say we need to take accountability for our health. With that said, what are you doing now for people? Because you seem to have found your passion. You found that journey. It's not a matter of making tons of money and fitting in, because you are doing a service for people. You're helping people now as a wellness coach. You definitely have shown that even though you've been diagnosed, you found an alternative way to stay off of medication and still enjoy life. It's still there. But it's not handicapping you. So what are you doing now for people?
Yeah, so I run reset sessions. So if you're feeling burnout, you've been diagnosed, you're going through a divorce, you're going through a hard time, I believe that it only takes a moment to create momentum for you in the positive direction.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm all about finding things that are authentic to the person and the individual that I'm working with, and helping them get out of that rut and create a reset for them. So it's like a pivotal changing moment in their lives to kind of, rocket them forward to gain that positive momentum to carry with them. I want them to carry it with them for the rest of their lives.
How can the viewers be a part of this beautiful program of resetting that mindset? Because I think everything starts with the mind. If you don't get your mind right on anything, goals, ambitions, whatever, you've already defeated the purpose. How can the viewers be a part of this program that you got going on?
There's a form to fill out in the bio of my TikTok. My TikTok is _Hayslip, my last name. And that's where I hit heavy on mindset, different things that I'm going through, how to overcome challenges. There's a form in my bio. You can click on it, fill it out. I'll take a look at it, reach out to you, and we will get you right. You know, we will propel you to that next level of yourself that has always been there, but you just needed somebody to come along beside you, like I needed when I was diagnosed, to say, no, let's go, let's do this. Like, don't worry about that. Like, we can figure all of that out together. So I'm your person. Let's go.
So do you work when somebody's filling this information out? I'm pretty sure it's confidential. How personal is it? Or is that done after they fill out the bio? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of people don't want to give out a whole bunch of stuff about themselves on a social media platform. How much is detailed in doing the paperwork prior to giving out that information?
Yeah, for sure. It's a confidential form. It comes straight to me, so it's not public. And it just, what it highlights is where you're stuck, what you're trying to overcome, what you're working towards, just so I can kind of review what it is that is sort of blocking you or keeping you stuck. So just like some general information. Mm-hmm. And then I can take a look at that and go deeper with them on a call.
Okay. Now, do you have a website as well people can go to?
I keep it simple, and I just use the TikTok for now.
So everything's on TikTok. Okay, great.
Yep.
Well, I tell you what, thank you so much for taking the time out to come and share such an impactful story, a journey of truly beast mindset. Guys, make sure you reach out. All it takes is a click of a button to make a new friend or to learn new information for yourself and to help others. You're definitely doing a whole lot, Amber. I appreciate you. Keep on going. Let us be a resource for you if you ever need help with amplifying your message to the world. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, this has been another exciting episode of the Andre the Beast Crayton Show.